Hi there, this is Tim with another unboxing video. This time it is NASCAR Legends. I do own a few of the other packages that NASCAR Legends came in, but what I'm going to be unboxing today is this limited edition version with the diecast car. NASCAR Legends was based on the 1970 season, and as you can see, it's got some pretty cool artwork with the King, Richard Petty there, and him leading the field, it looks like. Really was an incredible product, this, but I have heard from Steve Myers, who works for iRacing and obviously worked for Papyrus for at least their last few titles, that this really wasn't a successful product at all. Both Grand Prix Legends and NASCAR Legends really didn't do very well. Feel free to pause to read any of this text if you want to. Now, obviously, the regular version without the diecast car is basically exactly the same. It just doesn't have the window in the front, and it doesn't have the diecast car. I have read that there are a couple of different versions with two different diecast cars available, and I do have both of the diecast cars that have been mentioned. This is, to me, one of the best big boxes that Papyrus made. It's beautifully designed. I love the pictures that were chosen. It's just really, really well done. So here's the Papyrus Torino. Number 75. NASCAR logo on the rear. So it's by Racing Champions Inc. and it does have a date on the bottom of 1992, which is a lot earlier than I would have expected. It's in fact quite strange to see that, considering when the product was actually released. So I'm not really sure whether the cars were produced without the Papyrus logo on there and then that was added later. Here is the other car that I have read was included in a different version. This is also 1992. But obviously it's not a Papyrus-sponsored car. It's a Bobby Isaac car instead. But I thought I would show that because I have read on archived pages that this is the other car that was available. Okay, let's get inside the actual box now. We have the game manual, which is actually pretty extensive. A Sierra Sports advertisement, key card, and CD. Alright, so looking at the CD first, obviously it's the box cover, NASCAR Legends on the spine, and it's advertising NASCAR 3 on the rear. Nothing on the inside cover. And there is the CD. Again, I think everything that's in this box is so well designed. Whoever was doing their graphical design work at this point did a stellar job. Okay, so here is the Sierra Sports advertisement. It has fishing, hunting, and some bike racing over on the right. You should be able to pause and read any of this if you want to again. Oh, it's bull riding. And here are the racing ones. Obviously, there's NASCAR Legends, NASCAR 3, Viper Racing by Monster Games, and Grand Prix Legends. So here's the game manual. I'm actually going to take some time and look through this manual fully. You should be able to see on the video index when you can skip until to kind of get through the manual if you don't want to look at it. But I am going to look at every page in this one and basically make it so that if you wanted to, you could pause on each page and read it all. Obviously, it's going through installation. An introduction to the 1970 season. This manual is definitely full of information. I kind of feel like they did mix in a manual with a lot of historical information. I think in other titles like Grand Prix Legends, you had the four-wheel drift book, which was a separate book, but in this manual, I feel like they mixed it in. It's all in here. Graphical options. A whole section just explaining the menus. We think that a lot of simulations don't really have intuitive menus now. Well, back then it was pretty bad in a lot of cases. It was only really if you'd used a lot of previous titles that you would really understand how things worked, because they were familiar to you from the previous one. A lot of race strategy stuff, learning about tire temperatures, fuel strategy, things like that. Some in-car adjustments. You could obviously make adjustments to wedge and screw jacks and choose not to repair damage while you're racing. It did have a pretty good selection of real-world drivers included and real-world cars. But I did end up having to download a car set for 1970 from basically mod groups. NASCAR Legends had basically the same replay options that you would see, I think, from maybe NASCAR 2 through to NASCAR 1999. I don't think there was a lot of progression that the user would notice. There's a few different race modes, obviously, including multiplayer. And you could personalize your car. Explaining how driving works here with understeer and oversteer. Car setup, which is obviously different to the in-race adjustments that it covered earlier. Interesting that it takes you through the process and actually tells you to take 10-lap runs to adjust your setup. Setup is something that I think a lot of people still struggle with to this day. Honestly, for myself, it's something I just don't have time for. And obviously the cars in 1970 were quite different from the ones today. There's a lot of adjustments that do the same thing, but in different ways. So here are some of the tracks. Obviously Alabama International Motor Speedway is Talladega. There is Atlanta, which was obviously changed a couple of times. I think the last time it was changed was 97 or so. Bowman Gray, which interesting thing with this one is that the pit lane is on the outside, which was something that I'm not sure was even possible with Papyrus simulations until this was done. Bristol, obviously very different to what we saw in other NASCAR sims. Charlotte Motor Speedway, obviously again, quite different. Darlington, again, quite different. Greenville Pickens. Martinsville. And Michigan. I didn't actually know Michigan was old enough to be in a sim of this type until it was actually in it. Rockingham. North Wilkesboro. North Wilkesboro is interesting as well because it's obviously made a comeback recently. It's now included in the iRacing product. Ontario Motor Speedway isn't actually old enough to be in the 1970 season. In fact, you can see at the top there it says that it didn't appear on the schedule till 1971, but they thought it would be a nice period addition. Richmond. I'm not sure if that's the same Richmond as is still raced on today. Riverside was a road course that now doesn't exist. Texas World Speedway. Thompson Speedway, that obviously still exists because I've been there. And here is an extensive, quite a thorough look at the 1970 season, the story of it essentially. There's some special profiles on particular driver, like David Pearson there, Wendell Scott here. Quite an interesting season for them to have chosen and profiled. It's it's similar to Grand Prix Legends. It's actually the perfect season for a simulation to have been made of this kind. It shows that they put a lot of thought into it. It's just a brilliant manual. Absolutely fantastic manual. Bobby Isaac, who the diecast car was from, obviously featured quite prominently in the 1970 season. Here's kind of a cutaway of a car of that time. Fantastic historical and technical information in this manual. Here's the customer service numbers. Obviously you can see Havas Interactive were quite prominent. That's the company that I got mine through. So looking at the credits here, there's a few names I think I recognize here. Richard Yazzie from Grand Prix Legends, obviously. Grant Reeve, who is at iRacing now. I think this may have been his first title with Papyrus. I think Matt Marsala is familiar. And Kathleen Ott was at Papyrus a long time, I think. I recognise Sean Wise, Eric Bush, Tim MacArthur, Greg Hill, I think, is with iRacing as well. Jay Taylor was with iRacing, isn't anymore, or I don't think he's anymore. Steve Vandergriff obviously did all of the manuals. There's actually a lot of people on here I recognise. Bob Stanley, Brian Simpson. Yeah. A lot of people still involved, especially at iRacing. Sean Wise was the crew chief voice. That's interesting. I think he did a couple of titles actually, maybe NASCAR Racing 3 as well. And Jan Cole of the pits took the photos of the Richard Petty car that's used on the covers. The US pits is or was a huge sim racing site, especially in the 90s. There's your licensing information. Okay, so I mean, you may think that's it, but there is actually an add-on for NASCAR Legends. And there it is. This came with the 2000 Daytona 500 race program. You had to go to the Daytona 500 to get this, and it is Daytona for NASCAR Legends. And you can obviously move that over into your actual game and use it in your season. So there. All right. Hope that was interesting. Please subscribe. Click the thumbs up button. Thank you.